Hello and welcome. I'm Rosemary Pena, President of the Black German Heritage and Research Association. Our conversation today is the second in our Fall 2023 event series in collaboration with and for our students at Davidson College. My colleague, Dr. Emily Fraser-Rath, and I are delighted to introduce to some and reintroduce to others visual artist Zari Harat, a longtime and dear friend of the BGHRA. Before we get started, though, I'll ask Emily if she'll kindly share a little about our work together before introducing and turning the conversation over to Zari and our students. Emily?
Thank you, Rosemary. So we are so honored to be able to invite Zari Harat to our class, to Davidson College, and to the BGHRA today. Today is November 16th, 2023, and we, Dr. Pena, me, and most importantly, our students, are nearing the end of our 12th week together in our German 231 class, entitled Black German Art and Resistance. The class is conceived of in three parts. It is first a survey course in the field of Black German cultural studies. Second, it is a community-based learning course as we support the BGHRA through our work, and will feature our final projects on the BGHRA archive. And it is, most importantly, an opportunity for students and, through these recordings, our broader BGHRA and Davidson communities to speak with people whose lives and work are at the intersections of artistic expression, resistance and activism, and identity, among many other things in modern day Europe and beyond. For today's class, I would like to thank my colleagues in German Studies here at Davidson for your continued support and encouragement. And thank you to Susan Caldwell, our administrative assistant, for helping to make these visits this semester possible. In a moment, Dr. Pena and I will fade into the background and play moderator for the remainder of our time together and allow our students to have the floor. They have prepared incredibly insightful questions based on Zari's artwork and her lecture from last year. So our guest today is Zari Harat, a Hamburg-based visual artist who has studied art, spirituality, and teaching. She embodies a cultural merge, having been born in the US to a South Asian family, and now having lived in Germany most of her life. After her arrival in Berlin in 1981, Zari became an active member in the women's movement. She was a student of Audre Lorde's and a single mother who wanted to give her daughter a world of freedom, which she believed was easier to accomplish as an artist in Germany. Zari has lived a life that resonates with Audre Lorde's discussion of her own hyphenated identity. Zari is a traveler, a teacher, a friend, an artist, a healer, and a bridge person who embraces life beyond Europe, Africa, Asia, South America, and the US. She cares about her friends, and many of her pieces tell stories and speak to dialogue, tolerance, the pandemic that was a big thing last year, the current crisis in the Middle East, accidents, healing accidents, and brutal encounters, and looking for forgiveness to make this earth hers to share with her fellow sentient beings. Her work is available to purchase, and you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media outlets, such as her website, www.zariharat.com, that her daughter Moira maintains and assists her with. So Zari's artwork was featured at our BGHRA conference in February of this year, and we are happy to welcome her back to our virtual Davidson classroom after having her speak with our last Black German Art and Resistance class in the fall of 2022. So with that, I'll turn things over to our students and to Zari.
So, hello, my name is Zari, and I'm a painter, and I draw every day, and I was really happy to be a part of your group last year. And I encourage people to document your experience going inside to find answers. And the work I'm going to show you has a lot to do with the current political situation, the current situation with friends who are now quite divided with each other. And due to the Gaza Strip being occupied by Israel. And so you have Semitic people fighting Semitic people, you know, and the press tries to call some people anti-Semitic, but we are all working on this together. And because I'm a painter, I work with my experiences all the time. Because I think we share this earth together. We have a lot to give to each other here. And I'll be really, really happy to see what you all do. And I'm going to let you ask me questions, but I'm going to show you some of my current pieces. Let me share the screen. I'm going to preview. This piece was called Overwhelming. Can you see it? These are pieces that are done with watercolor, or as we say in German, aquarelle, and pen and ink. So I use multicolored inks and pens and brushes and mixed media. And I feel that each piece tells a story. And the news was quite overwhelming lately because the more and more that we hear, the more and more that it causes a lot of disruption. And so this was my approach to the children and the parents. So as you can see, I take the situation, it's my story. So somebody sent me a message. Hi, everyone. If you're able to turn on your cameras, please do. Remember, you will not be recorded unless you speak. If you feel more comfortable sending me a question to us, send it my way. Okay. So I want to hear your questions as well. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I do. In the background, you see a painting. Right now, I'm going to even take off my background for a second, and I'm going to let you see me in my studio. So if you were here in Hamburg, you would see that this is what my studio looks like from the background. And I use different pieces of artwork to tell my stories. So I'm going to continue sharing with you. And it's good to see your faces so that I know who I'm looking at. Do any of you paint? Does anybody paint or draw?
We went through this last week, and I think we have one student who sometimes paints, but we all had the opportunity last week to paint with Syrian artist Itab Harib, who was here on campus. Yeah, so we had like a little hour where we painted together. Yeah.
So if you want to, while we're talking, get out your inks or your brushes or whatever, and we can paint and draw together as we discuss it. This is a personal piece. It's about blocking. I'm really interested in social media and the whole thing of how people treat each other, because especially with the political situation right now, this piece is about blocking. I'm going to show you.
Zari, we
Yes?
can't see the piece. We can't see it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will have to start to share again. Sorry about that. So I'll just come back to you. I could show them like this. It's a little perhaps better. I'll just have to go through different ones. As you will see, I do a wide variety of work. This is inside of my studio. Can you see this now? Okay. So I had an open house and I was showing some of my digital work as well as some of my work that's done with pen and ink and watercolors and less acrylics these days. So that's how it looked at the time, the studio. Studios are always changing. Today, as you see, it looks different. So it's on a different space. Let me try to move along. This piece is about one of the people who was in our discussion last week, Eliane, and it was a watercolor mixture with gouache and oil pastels and the different types of Conti crayons and materials, and it was about a discussion we had. A lot of times, if you look at my work, it has a lot to do with storytelling. This is this piece is completely just working with layers and layers of different types of material. It's about what's called in German dein Mund halten, keeping your mouth shut. Do you all speak German? No.
Just one, Katie Ann.
Ah, okay. Well, when you keep your mouth shut, which is what this piece is about, you see it's somebody who cannot keep their mouth shut. They have to say a lot. So that was my comment about that. And that's a slightly older piece. This is another piece that I showed last year. And it was a very different time. It was a dialogue between friends. Do you all draw usually? Or did you just draw last week because you had the Syrian artist with you? Does anybody draw? Does anybody tell their visual stories?
So what's interesting about our class this semester is not many artists, but the majority of the class are on the wrestling team. So they tell their
Oh,
stories through sport and through, their bodies on the mat.
yeah. Well, this is what one of my little girls did for me in a class. She comes from a place called Harburg. She used to come from Lebanon, and she's learning German. And so we were talking in French and English, and she's there with another friend. And so she decided she couldn't put this together in German, but she wrote it in English. So I thought it was okay. So sometimes my students participate in being around me. This is an older piece. It's from 2021. It's called The Quiet Before the Storm. And I'm revisiting it because of what's going on right now politically. And a lot of refugees are coming. I don't know what's going on in the US right now because we don't get so much news from the US, but we are getting lots of people coming in every day. The ones whose parents happen to have a grandparent who was born in the US can come to Germany. The ones who don't have any association with the US or Canada, they end up being refugees and they don't come to Germany so easily. So for most Germans, I think they're all refugees, but the reality is that these are the people who used to be rich. And so this was my piece about the quiet before the storm, because we don't know what's going to happen with the ceasefire. Hopefully, children's lives will be saved. I'll show you some more pieces. So let's see. This one was about the Ukrainian situation. I'm sure that that also touched a lot of you. This was my take on people from the Ukraine who were coming to Hamburg. A lot of people keep coming, and And so, of course, because Germany has deals with refugees perhaps a little bit more actively, this comes into my artwork. So this was my piece about the Ukrainian women who are mostly coming, because the men are supposed to stay there and fight. And this piece is called Masking Deception. It's about people telling the truth about things, not telling the truth, and being confronted. And that's what I think is going on a lot these days. Am I going too quickly? Okay, thank you, Emily. Because I don't want people to get overwhelmed and say, oh, well, she went so quickly, I couldn't even look at anything. So I'm just going to show you what I think is relevant. This is a piece that I did. It's about listen to your femininity. It's Macron, who's the French president. I felt that he gave a speech in French about how men should be in touch with their softness and their gentleness, and I wasn't feeling him. I didn't feel he was really doing it, so was my response to what he was doing. So as you can see, I do have personal relationships to things that happen around me. This was at an exhibit that I had in Osnabrück, which is in northern Germany, close to the Dutch border. And it was the first time they had so many foreigners together at an exhibit. And so this was my reaction to the people who came to the exhibit at Hase 29 in Osnabrück. Are you all thinking of learning German?
We've had a few, right? Dylan, DJ, who might start next year. Yeah.
I was teaching a little girl from Bulgaria, and this was my response to looking at the freedom in her artwork. So this was after she had class with me, I did this piece, and it's called Yvette. It's in German. It's her way, you know, how she is. And this piece is called Puppet on the String. So I think a lot of times we happen to be puppets on the string. So I'm just rushing through some of the pieces that I've done. This was a piece I did in Paris. If you notice, different colors come when you're in different places. I had an art residency in August of 2022, July to August, and then I went to work in Paris in September. And so when you are in Paris, you realize your French is there. You have to speak French. And I was teaching a drawing class, so of course I was speaking, but I was also letting the colors that I experienced in this area come to me. So let me go back to finding you. I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I have to get some more things. Is everybody able to follow me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I had a question. You talked about how different colors represent different things. Do different modes of artwork, such as like different using pencils versus crayons versus watercolors, do those also have different meanings?
They all have different meanings, and it's good to be able to work well with them because it's, you know, it's like when you drive, you go from first gear to second gear. Oh, you drive with automatics. Okay. I drive with gears. And so for me, the different colors or the different medium are all, shifting gear. The piece I'm going to show you now, I'm going to share again. It's called Handling Fear. And I think it's one of the things that has come up right now, handling fear. You notice, you asked about the colors. If you notice, the colors are quite different when I look at rockets going off and bombing and children. So my palette has changed a little bit lately.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if it was just colors or if it was modes of artwork that also changed the meaning.
They do. Everything changes because if I want to tell a story, it's not just color, it's also each piece has a lot to do. You probably see them as abstractions, but they are movements of people. They're the cup, for example, the spilled cups, the cups of blood here, the rockets going off. I mean, there are lots of different things going on in these pieces. I don't know whether you see them quite, but those are some of the things that are a part of it. Another piece I did is called Turning Off War. I really want us to turn off the war machines. I want us to learn to talk to each other, stop blocking each other, to start hearing each other and start working together. So I was looking at some of the footage that I saw on the BBC and some of the footage that I saw on other media sources. And there was a woman who was very pregnant. And I felt, well, she's a new mother who's bringing new life so that life doesn't die, life continues. Despite all of the havoc and the inability sometimes we have that we don't listen to each other. So if you're all drawing right now, that would be lovely, but I guess you're not drawing. This is what I just show you what in my studio, which is here, this is what my studio could look like. This is what some of the materials that I could be working with. And of course, this is a beginning piece. It's I'm doing much more in it. But this is, I lay it down and the world around me speaks to me, and so that comes up. Does anybody work with fountain pens? Do you know what a fountain pen is? Wrestlers can work with fountain pens too. This is my hand from working in my studio. It always gets full of ink and paint. This was after teaching these little kids. It's called the hourglass. Because if you turn an hourglass over, the time starts all over again. This piece is called Resilience is Our Choice. So in German, resilience is called being a Stehaufmensch. You get up. You don't just stay on the bottom or just cry. You get up and you have a new life. You do different things. You forgive and keep going. This was a piece I did about my father because we were in Israel together many years ago, and it's called Papa, Can You Hear Me? Probably it's before your time, but there is a singer, Barbara Streisand, And she played in Yintel, and she played a woman who wanted to be a yeshiva student. A student who wanted to learn about the Kabbalah and about the teachings, given in older, more traditional or more spiritual Jewish backgrounds. It was my piece called Papa, Can You Hear Me? So this piece is a mixed media. It's gouache and watercolor. So it's probably working more with mood. And it's about an A3. An A3 is, well, I don't even know what it is in the US anymore. I think 1 inch is 2.2 centimeters. So it's about 42 by 21, 42 times 21.97 centimeters. So it's not small. The next piece is called Temptations of War. You can ask questions.
I actually have a question about kind of your process.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're making your pieces, do you start with the overarching theme and then do you pick the media you want to use, or do you pick the colors, or kind of how do you go about your process of creating these different works?
Well, it depends. If you were to see this room right now, it's full. On the other side, you're just looking at the neater part of it. And it's pretty full. And so I have fountain pens, watercolors, gouache, brushes, everything here. Some acrylics. I don't use acrylics so much at the moment, but everything is. And so I think about something, maybe I hear some music, or maybe I'm listening to the news, or maybe I'm talking to friends and something comes up. Like one friend, Dana, who lives in Beirut, said, well, there's a bomb going on outside of my house. She told me the other day, it just dropped. And I came up with Temptations of War. You're tempted to dwell on it. And so, of course, the way she was graphically telling me certain stories, there are lots of colors that came out that are, and lots of forms and shapes. And sometimes I draw over them or paint over them. So sometimes they might have 50 layers altogether, which you don't see, but I could, if you were sitting with me and we were working together, you would watch it. Why do you ask?
I'm just curious because last week when we were all painting as a group, and talking to Etab, her process, she usually starts with just color and kind of like visions of home are her beginning parts and goes from there. So I was just curious kind of what your process in making all your works was.
Well, they change, if I'm sitting outside, well, outside is not a good idea anymore because Hamburg is very rainy, but outside a little earlier was, I would just sit outside and I would just feel something that came to me, and I walk around with my materials. And so sometimes I just do things where there's no color, but I happen to like color a lot, as you probably noticed. So I can work in monotones, but I really like to work in color. And because the topic of war is all around me right now, and I hear new people coming to Germany, I hear the German people speaking and their worries, which I don't think they should worry. And I hear the worries of the people who are coming with everything in their suitcases, and they think they will never be home again, and they used to have everything. And then I have my little kids in my classes who we were supposed to have a drawing class in English, but we're not because they have to learn German, and I speak German well enough to speak to them in German. And so we draw together, and these kids tell horrific stories. Some people just got here 3 weeks ago. Some people got here when they had their financial crisis in 2019. And then there was the COVID pandemic, which I talked a lot about in the last time I was with your group. And so I listened to my little teachers. They are my teachers and I'm their teacher. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
There's a lot of sensuality you might see, but I think that has it to do with me listening to people telling me their stories. This was called War Inside, and it's about, you know, no one's listening to the other person. So we have a war inside, I feel, before we can have a war outside. So I used a lot of different brush techniques in this piece. It had to do, and also with, it has a lot of watercolor and gouache in it. So I deliberately thought about those tones and that mood.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's like your preferred, I guess, your favorite medium of art?
Oh, I don't, because I use all of it. So I do have acrylic pieces I was doing, but then I feel that sustainability is very important to me. So I only use acrylics if I really, really want to, and not because it's there, because I don't want to spread so much plastic in our world. I think plastic is not biodegradable. And if you look at cheaper shampoos, many times we have all bought cheaper shampoos and we've noticed that it goes into our body, the microplastic. So that's something that I think about. So I try to use more environmentally friendly materials. I try. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you drawing right now?
Uh, a little bit. I don't exactly know like what specifically I'm supposed to draw. I've just got a little bit on paper.
Okay, well, you could draw what we're talking about, how you feel, what's going on inside of you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very interested in the ceasefire. In progress, ceasefire, no weapons. I think we all need to have a life without weapons. That we need to talk to each other. So there's a lot of material here that that I have used. And if you see the work in real life, I think that I've been able to give you true colors here as to, if you were to see the work, because I'm looking at it here, it's basically true colors, but I'll keep going. There's this piece called Algorithm. This has to do with social media. Are you all on social media?
Pretty
Do you
much all of
draw?
us. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're on social media, do you spend your time drawing your feelings?
No, ma'am.
No.
So
By
I can go on, go on.
by drawing our feelings, do you mean like finding things that relate to our mindset, or do you mean like putting pen to paper what we see on social media?
Yeah, you could do that, or putting pen to paper, how you feel as a wrestler, what, you know, the movement that you have, and seeing how you could interpret that, or, you know, transfer it to paper or canvas.
So
Just
when you're making these paintings or these works, do you often put your own emotion, or are you reflecting the emotion of kind of like the broader public around you, or is it kind of a mix of both, and how do you navigate that?
Well, for example, if you look at resilience is choice, is our choice. I was dealing with the conversations I had with people. And I was listening to some people having problems dealing with the situation. And so I was grappling with what they are going through. Oh, it's a nice little cat visiting. And and so in this case, I was, just dealing with other people's stories. The algorithm piece is just my reaction to what happens on social media, how I felt. So it depends upon what I'm doing or, how I feel. Like this piece is called Humility of the Petals of Choice, the humility of the petals of choice. And I think that each person is a really important flower. So I was thinking about humility and how do we start listening to each other? So I have a feeling that many times people don't hear each other, and that's why they become violent. Sometimes in my class, I have Palestinian kids who are sitting with Maronite Christian kids from Lebanon, and they all speak Arabic. They also speak English. Now they're learning German. They'll probably forget English one day because if they're learning German, they are in the survival mode. And so when I work with them, I try to guide or accompany them to finding their own inner stories, because that's what's important for me, to face my own inner stories, to overcome fear. A lot of times people are violent. My experience is that because they're afraid, and fear can make people turn into monsters. Doesn't matter who you are. And so my tool of choice is to draw and to paint. Other people do other things. You can make comments if you want to. This is part of this. It's a perils frame. It was dealing with humility, and now I've gone on to perils. How we put the things into frames, how we don't often hear each other, so we block stories. Because I'm trying to understand how our world said that we were going to clean up the environment, that we were not going to waste materials, and now we have completely thrown everything off board as an earth. And I wonder if we will be able to do something, because now we have, with this action of bombing, what's going to happen? Will we have an earth to do things with that? But I'm thinking a lot about Greta Thunberg. You know who she is, right? So I've been just thinking in my work, I reflect on the things that come to me. So lately I haven't been sleeping a lot. I've been staying up drawing. The next piece is called Celebrate, and it was my background a little while ago, and I think we have to all celebrate. We can't just look at seeing everything as being morbid, because life is also a party.
I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
Just curious, typically like celebrations are kind of like, like bright and happy. So I'm just curious why you kind of use like darker tones for this one.
Because I'm listening to people who are celebrating, who are afraid they will lose their houses, that they are leaving their home country, and yet they celebrate, they sing. And on one level, you could think, oh, why are they celebrating or singing or dancing? Because I think as human beings, we are, what I talked about earlier, we are resilient. So with resilience, we get up. And sometimes our dances are darker, but those dances are also very special. The lighter dances and the darker dances. If you watch dancers, you will see that they go through different layers or different expressions. I'm thinking of Martha Graham or Isadora Duncan or Carmen. What is her last name? Carmen de Labat. She was married to this.
De la Valade.
Yeah.
Carmen de la Valade. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she said that every dance has its point of regeneration. So that's why this piece probably, I didn't see it that way, is working with this different, level of color.
Yes, ma'am.
This piece is called Chilies. Do you like to eat chilies?
Are you talking about like the restaurant or
There's
like
a restaurant called Chili's. I'm talking about the spice chili, the chilies, the red, chilies that you can cut up and they're a little bit spicy. I don't think they're too spicy, but and in this I was showing also my kids in my classes in Harburg some different techniques. So we were talking about food and they said that they loved being in Germany now, but they are homesick for chilies. And I thought that's the topic today. So we're going to deal with chilies and they can learn a few techniques and we can have fun. This piece is called 6-month balance. For me, it's being able to rearrange ourselves and to look at things again and again with different eyes. Some people have a 5-year plan. Some people have a 6-month. They, return to the past and then they find the balance in how they've been living their lives. I'm going to show you a piece that is not finished, but it's a piece that I'm working on. And it was what I was watching when we did have sunshine, maybe. So this piece is from October. And there was a woman sitting, talking to her husband. And I liked the feeling of how her lips were moving when she was talking to him. And I didn't finish it at the time, but it was my mood that I felt about them.
So first question, how long does one painting tend to take to complete? Because these are multi-month processes, and if you have the model, the image, how do you return to that image to finish the painting?
If you were to look at my studio right now, you would see a very cluttered place of ongoing returns, and it depends. Some pieces could take 2 years, some pieces could take 1 day, some pieces could take a week or two. It depends upon what I'm doing. I might put something aside and then return to it. Something could be resolved or come together in just 1 day. Some things could, will take a week and I go back and come back and I look at it again and I feel it and feel it differently.
What drives you towards a specific painting you're working on? Is it just the stories you're hearing, accumulation of those feelings driving you to paint?
Well, I feel like I've been painting since I was 2 years old. And so I just observe the world around me, and I'm very social, very engaged in the world, and I want to know other people's stories, and I want to be a part of them if I can, even if it means just telling the story for myself and reflecting. Did I answer you?
I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think telling our stories is really, really powerful. I don't know what you're doing in German studies right now, but if you notice the stories of the people here, you could, one day, I was in a place in Hamburg called Wandsbek Chaussee. Wandsbeker Chaussee is an old working area, and I met a woman and her friend, and they both moved like little old German ladies move in their 80s. That's a cliche, sorry. Okay, they moved in a very slow but deliberate way. That was politically more correct, I hope. And I watched them, and I noticed after a while that one of the women was a bit dark, darker than me. And she was an older woman, and that's something you don't always see in Germany. And I listened to them speak, and they were speaking in this Hamburg dialect. It's called Hamburger Schnack. And I understood quite a bit. And they finally noticed as they were going up the escalator, they said to me in German, "Why are you listening?" And I said, "Because you're telling a very fascinating story." And this one woman, so we started talking, and she had a father who came from Ghana. Her mother had a Ghanaian mother and a German father, and she lived through this war here. And so that affected quite a few drawings, because I had an experience I didn't expect to experience, but my life is full of unexpected experiences. And unfortunately, we had the pandemic lockdown, so I never got to meet up with this lady again. She moved to Berlin to be with her son. But I, spoke to the two ladies. We had coffee together, and I was just really happy I could speak German because I could be a part of their conversation. And I asked him if I could just start sketching to take some notes for myself. And they said, "Yeah, do what you want to do. We didn't know we were that important." And I said, "Your story is fantastic." And so maybe for you at your university, this would be history. For me, this was more than history, because it was something that was coming together, life that was coming together. Just like if you see this piece, I went to an exhibit in Paris, and so I made a note in French to myself about some materials. So I think what comes to me, what's around me, usually shows up in my artwork.
So
You've
go ahead. Okay, I was just gonna ask about when do you decide to put words or the title on to the work versus leaving it completely like with no words on it? How do you decide when do you use that?
That's really interesting, because sometimes I have the title in me as I'm working on it, and sometimes it takes a much longer time and then it comes to me later. So it depends. Like sometimes I'll write a poem and I'll look at the poem, or I take these morning pages. Do you know what morning pages are? I write every day 3 pages when I get up in the morning and drink my coffee about what I feel. And that helps me to clear a lot of things out and be prepared for the day. And for me, that gives me the chance also to reflect. I think drawing is a lot of active meditation or active reflection. For me, it's like active prayer. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah.
So in this piece, I just happened to have been at Saint-Quatre, Paris, Spectacle des Euros. and explosions, and I was just looking at the colors around me, and I carry a lot of pins and things with me, and I just sat there and started to let them come out of me. Like the time when I saw those ladies, they were, they were busy talking, and I was looking at them and drawing. And the German father of this grandfather of this woman had put her in a Waldorf school, which is from Rudolf Steiner. And I was really fascinated because you would never have thought that a woman who lived in a working class neighborhood, and the reason they lived there is because during the Nazi time they had to move. And her mother had a shop close by, and she when she had to leave school, some older teachers who had retired started to teach her. So I try to listen to people's stories, and then they come into my work. So I'm sure if I heard your grandmother or your grandfather or you or your friend speaking, I would have different colors, different shifts, different things would happen. Have all of you been to Europe? Have all of you been to Germany? What happened when you were in Germany? Somebody said they were in Germany.
I studied there last fall in Freiburg.
Mhm.
And I lived with 4 German students. So that was a really cool experience. Yeah, I really loved it. I loved the city in the Black Forest, and yeah, I had a really, really good time.
Did you like the paper there? Freiburg has really lovely paper.
Yeah, all of the paper shops were beautiful.
I love
And
paper.
I have a good friend who is a artist as well, who was there with me, and we would go sit along the Dreisam river that runs through Freiburg, and we would draw what we saw around us.
Ah, wonderful. And the rest of you haven't yet been to Germany. Are you planning to come? Not yet.
Yes, one day. Hopefully.
I saw somebody had a German last name. So if you have a German last name, you have parents from Germany or grandparents?
Jackson, that might be you.
Emily, you have a German last name. Is your husband German, or is it your name?
Rath is my name, so that's
Sorry.
no, it's okay. And Fraser is my husband, so he's Scottish Irish, and I'm almost all German. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My
Interesting.
great grandmother came from Germany in the late 1800s.
Oh, where did she come from?
From Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, somewhere there.
That's
Yeah.
an interesting area.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the Amish people who are leaving the US like to go live there because they think it's going to be quiet. But now the big German industrial parks are moving there too.
Yes, yeah.
And they have a very interesting dialect they speak in that area. So
Yeah,
it's
my grandma said that her grandmother, is that how that goes? Yeah, her grandmother, my great grandmother, never spoke English. So even when she came over, she was always speaking German. Yeah.
That happens, sometimes when I lived in San Francisco, I lived in an area close to Castro where my neighbors, when we had the earthquake, I had a lot of German neighbors who didn't speak English. They could say hello and thank you and count to 5. And if your husband, if you stay at home and you're a housewife and or you work in a prison, you know, you don't really have to speak very much. So
Exactly. Yeah. Interesting.
this piece is called Boxing Day. It's about holidays. In the US, you have these are called public holidays. And people in this country love their public holidays, their Boxing Days. This is another celebration for them because the people have permanent jobs. I think they have between 13 or to 20 public holidays. Plus they get off from work about a month. If you're a freelancer or you're an artist, you don't get off, you have to pay. So you go and live in other places and work. But for those people, that's what they, and I was watching their celebrations.
You mentioned living in other places, and you've mentioned living in France and Germany, and I believe those are the two you've mentioned so far. Is there sorry, go ahead.
Well, I've lived in Amsterdam before. I've lived in Bombay before. I've lived in Cochin before. I've lived in Montreal before. I've lived in Beirut before. I like to be in different places. I like to feel people in different places.
How have those places affected your artistic style and mode of art?
Well, the colors, you know, different people move differently. Like when I lived in Chicago, people move differently in Chicago than they move in New York or New Jersey. Or people move differently in Quebec or Montreal than they move in Boston. And so you have different, if you look, you feel the light comes to you, either you feel it or you see it or it's around you. Different shapes come, you know, and it gives you a different story. Also, how people talk, the rhythm of how you speak. You have that in your work too. All these things come together in my work.
Is there a place that almost feels as a second home, or a place that has like completely changed your perspective?
I think every place changes my perspective. When I was in late December and January in Beirut, it reminded me of Delhi. Oh, yeah, okay. There are more places I've lived in. And I told the people there, I feel like I'm in North India and I'm dealing with some of my issues about North India, which I thought I'd resolved. And I realized some were, some weren't. And it gave me another depth and another perspective to look at the people because everybody thought I spoke Arabic. I mean, it was an assumption that they had, and they didn't want to believe that I didn't speak Arabic. They thought I was telling them a story, that I wasn't being honest. And it's what people, they put their stories on you and you put your stories on them, and then you have your dialogue with each other. And it's just like when Emily was telling me about her grandmother, great grandmother speaking German and coming from Mecklenburg for Pomerania, then I was thinking about that area and knowing it after the wall came down and then later. And so you go to places and you see them again and again with different eyes. I don't go sightseeing, but I feel the places that I am in, and I try to engage with them to eat their food if it's something I enjoy, like the chili story, you know, talking to these kids about chilies. You know, they were telling me about the chilies that they eat, and I was saying about the chilies I eat, and we talked about different spices that we like or don't like. And so we have a way to communicate. We have a manner, we find how we can learn from one another and see how much we share and that we're not so different. I mean, the more that I see uh, when I talk to other people, the more I see myself, and it makes me feel a lot of humility for this earth, because I think that there's some wonderful people on this earth, and I'd like to meet more of them.
So since
Very-
you've lived, oh, sorry.
No,
I was
you
just
go.
gonna say, since you've lived in many different places and traveled in many different places, why did you choose to live and stay and call Germany home base?
If you live in Germany, you can do your artwork much more. If I lived in the US, I would probably have to teach art and English, which I did in San Francisco before, 40 plus hours. And healthcare, I hear in the US is still not doing well. And here we have adequate healthcare if you want it. At least for example, if they've noticed that you don't want an operation and you say, well, I'd like to have a yoga class, they might give you a yoga class with other people. I do yoga on my own, but they might give you things that you can wear. In the US, you'd be paying a lot of money for it. And operations in the US are quite expensive. And I like the fact that the society gives people, still gives them a chance to start all over, to do different things. You have a chance to get to know yourself better. And I think everybody needs that chance. So I think Europe is a very welcoming way of giving people that chance. So for me, it was very good to come here with my daughter. If she had gone to school, for example, in the US, it would have been very expensive to have the level of education. And that's what I also was telling quite a few people when I was in Beirut in January, that Germany does give people the chance to be more equal, that the class issues aren't as harsh as perhaps in the US or in Lebanon or in India. All three are different places, but class plays a role, and it keeps people from coming into their own. For example, if you go to university in Germany, you basically are paying for your living expenses, but the university is paid for. So you might have to pay 23 euros for your fees. I just decided to sign up for some part-time classes, and because it's together with my bus ticket. And so until March next year, it's 229 euros so it's lowered my healthcare, given me a bus ticket, and I get a certain lower fee for my art supplies. So I don't know what you're paying at your university, but I think it's probably much more.
Yeah, that's a hot topic right now.
Okay, I don't want to
Very
cause
high. Zari, I have some questions from one of our students who is ill today and couldn't be in class. She
Yes.
asks, what does art mean to you? Do you think freedom can be expressed and or achieved in art?
I think that everybody can find their own freedom in their own art, and that I feel that creativity must be a part of everybody's lives. You don't have to be an artist, but you should know how you could use this tool to enrich your own lives. And so I think it's good to free one's thoughts, one's mind, to look at the inner thoughts that might be buried for so long. It's very easy to not be free, but it's really a victory for our earth if we use our creativity to change things. And I think everybody has the ability to be an artist. Most people run from it because they are told that art isn't elitist story, it's only for some people, but it's really something everybody can do. You know, and once people start doing their own artwork, they can also give themselves a lot and they can understand more about who they are. So if you keep a sketchbook and you look at your sketchbook 6 months later, like the 6-month balance piece that I showed you, you know, this was just, there were lots of sketches that had to do with this. So sometimes I have a sketchbook, well, I always have a sketchbook, and I write ideas down too. And I deal with what's going on around me. So it helps me deal with it. You know, too many people take medicine to deal with things. It's very easy to just draw and to let it go. And it sometimes inspires other people to see things differently.
Well, Zari, you're just going to have to come back again because, of course, our class has come to an end.
Oh, really? Oh, I had so much more.
Yes. Oh, well, you'll be back and you'll be back in February, and we'll just have to keep inviting you. But in
Okay.
closing, I'd like to thank you, of course, for today and for Emily and importantly, Davidson College for so many conversations that have been so warm and wonderful for us. I'd like to thank our amazing students who always make us proud. Today's recording will soon be on YouTube on our channel at Black Germans. Please
Great.
subscribe and, huh?
Great.
Oh, okay. Please subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you'll be notified as new recordings are added. Visit our website at bghra.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Eventbrite for details about other upcoming events and our annual conference in February 2024, for which Zari will be making another appearance and supplying our images for our art display. Thank you again. So follow us on Eventbrite as well to find out about our upcoming events and the conference. We hope that you've enjoyed today's conversation as much as we have. And until next time, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.